So I want to talk about an event that changed my life at the beginning of year 2021. So a lot of y'all don't know, some of y'all do know, a lot of y'all don't, but I work in the social work field, and one of the roles that I played was a case manager. So just a little bit of background about what I did. I used to work with foster kids, CPS kids, and what that looks like is CPS will come and drop the kids off to my facility, and I will be the case manager to about 30 kids, and I had to manage them, of course with the help of like my staff, of course, but it was a very challenging role to play and to be in, because at that point all of these kids' lives were in my hands and I was responsible for them. My signature was on every paperwork that you can think of when it came to intaking kids into my facility. Those kids definitely had a lot of trauma. They experienced a lot of trauma, and the relationship that I had with them was awesome. It wasn't a time that I wasn't close to not any one of my kids. They stayed there. Some stayed a couple of days. Some stayed, 30 days, 90, 60 days, even a year and a half, 2 years. That's how long some of the kids stayed. And the longer they stayed there. Some of them got worse, some of them got better, but a lot of the kids stayed because there wasn't no placement, for the kids to go into, because the kids that I dealt with was harder to place kids, meaning it was hard for CPS to place the kids in foster homes, other facilities, because of their, behaviors. And once again, I dealt with kids that experienced trauma from the ages of 4 all the way up until the age of 21. So a traumatic event that occurred was, it was this it's actually two males, but it was this one guy. He had just turned 18, had a very successful story, and I love hearing stories about kids who made it out of the system successfully. This young boy, he actually graduated while he was at the center. He did make a couple of bad choices, but nevertheless, once again, he graduated from high school. He completed all the programs that he needed to complete as far as like therapy goes. But then one night, I received a call from some other kids, from my staff, woke me up in the middle of the night that this kid got shot in a garage, and he got shot by his friend. And so that one was traumatic for me, because I spent 8 months, just making sure that this kid had everything that he needed so that this kid can beat the system. And it was like I said, it was very hard for me, because it's like, man, I started thinking about things that I could have done different. So for the kids that we had, when you turn 18, you can sign yourself out of care. He had just turned 18. And a lot of my kids, I would tell them, like, before you sign yourself out, make sure you have a plan. This kid was working on going to college. How I know? Because I had to sit on the court docket, to make sure that, he had everything he needed to make sure he was successful, before he ventured out into his future endeavors. So that was a traumatic experience that really hurt me, because I spent so much time, dealing with this kid through all the ups and downs and the doubts, and him being through the system. That's one. And I have another one that's going to tie into it. Then I had another incident. I had another young male, 18 also, had just turned 18, and cool kid, very respectful. He did not like when, the other kids would be, disrespectful to his favorite staff, supervisors. He just didn't like it. That boy would literally like fight you. And prior to his death, we spent a lot of time together, me picking him up, back and forth from school, really just talking to him, because he really wanted to make a change. He really, wanted to make a difference. This kid would elope. If you don't know what elope means, it means runs. So he would run away from the facility, always came back. He was never allowed off campus, because once you run away from the facility, you're not allowed outside for like 24 hours. And he knew that. He would always say, look, miss, I'm coming back. And, the staff would tell him, like, you're not even supposed to be leaving. So he'll be like, miss, I'm coming back. I just want to go get a tattoo. Very straightforward. Everything that he wanted to do whenever he eloped, he did, and he came right back. So to make a long story short, receive another phone call. At this time, this phone call was like at 5 in the morning from my staff. Then I started receiving text messages out my sleep, and I'm like, man, like, what's going on? Because the crazy thing about that one was that I had a dream about that accident. However, it was with somebody else. It wasn't with him. So this young man, prior to him passing away, he had called, apparently he called the facility talking to one of the administration staff and was just saying, you know, I'm tired. I don't want to do this no more, and things like that. He was at the facility, you know, prior to his death, but he ended up getting into a horrible situation there, and we had to call SAPD, and he ended up getting locked up in county. And before he actually got locked up, he talked to me. He begged me to, you know, tell the cops, like, no, don't take them, things like that, because it was a hard decision to make with calling SAPD on him in the first place. When he did that, never seen him again after that. He would come to the gate, but I would never see him when he would come. He was trying to apparently save a friend of his, dark, late at night, 4 o'clock in the morning. He tried to save his friend from walking in traffic. And the crazy thing about it is his friend didn't even walk in traffic. He did. So he ended up getting hit by a car on the highway, and that's how he passed away. So that was a traumatic, both of those events was very traumatic for me at the beginning of the year, because I actually had time to spend with these young males. And if you know, kids in the system, especially males, and they were Hispanic, if you know the Hispanic population, you know, it's very hard to see young males, you know, make it out of Hispanic population due to like gang violence and just things like that. So it was very hard for me, because as a social worker, as a case manager, that's not a success story. You know, you want, in the end, you want the good stories, like, you know what, I beat the system, I made it out. So that was my traumatic event right there. The second traumatic event that happened that really changed my life was the death of my sister. And now, this death happened back in October, and I'm gonna tell you why it was so traumatic for me. One, I always battle with being far from home. I'm 10 hours away from home, and I battle with that a lot, because my fear is that something's going to happen to a family member of mine, and I'm not going to be there. I'm not going to be there, you know what I'm saying, to see them prior to, you know, any incidents happening. If I have to leave, then I have to catch a quick flight, or I have to get on the road and travel. It's definitely very detrimental to be in a situation like that. So when I found out about, you know, the murder of my sister, it hit me. I was in the middle of Walmart, actually. I think I was getting some medicine. That's what I was doing, getting some medicine. And my dad called me. And when he called me, he was sniffing. And the first thing I could say, Dad, you all right? Like, you sick? You know, it's COVID at this time. So I'm up here thinking, like, you know, my daddy's sick. And you know, the first thing black people want to say, you heard what happened? No, I ain't heard what happened. I hear you sick right now, apparently. But he wasn't sick. He was, you know, he was crying. So I'm like, what's up, Daddy? Heard about what? He was like, your sister got shot. And I'm like, what? You know, I tend to make this crazy sound like, what? You know, whenever I hear some crappy news, because it's just shocking. So anyway, he proceeded to tell me what was going on. Mind you, I'm still in Walmart at this point. And then I froze in the middle of the aisle, and I just started crying and crying. I'm like, what? Because if you knew my sister, she don't even strike you as the person to even get involved. You know what I mean? And stuff like that. Like my family in general. And I got a couple of brothers, you know, who might, you know, and it's kind of scary. But my sisters, no. You wouldn't even, you would look at my sister and be like, what the, you would curse yourself. You'd be like, what the fuck, for real. So then I was crying. And then this lady came by. She was like, you okay? And I'm like, yes, ma'am. But then I hurried up and I went to go sit down in the pharmacy, like by the pharmacy area, because, you know, they had benches over there. So I sat down and I just cried and cried for hours. Like, I stayed there crying for a very long time. Then at that point, my phone just started buzzing. Everybody started hitting me up. Then I went on Facebook because I just couldn't believe it. And at this point, I'm still calling my sister because I'm like, she finna answer the phone. You know what I'm saying? And she didn't. So then I get on Facebook and I hear like, Finny, answer your phone. I hear this, that, and I'm like, what the fuck got me to answer the phone? Let me try to call her. She answered my phone call. So when that happened, I cried. The lady came back over there again and she was like, I heard what you were saying on the phone. I'm sorry to hear that, and things like that. So we talked about it, and everything was okay at that moment. Stayed in Walmart. I kid you not, I stayed there for like 3 hours crying. So then as the time went by, the months went by, the days went by, it was time to make that decision to, you know, plan everything, plan my visit home. You know what I'm saying? At this point, it's drop everything, come quick, Craig's in trouble. You know what I'm saying? Because is this my family you talking about? This ain't just no friend, this is my family, so drop everything. So then I reached out to my sister, tried to make sure everybody, you know, was okay. What y'all don't know is I have tons of brothers and sisters, which means, you know, being the oldest and have to carry that weight was very hard for me, because the last words that me and my sister shared was her newborn baby at the time having the same name as my daughter. And, you know, I was like, you know, she's so beautiful. And it was just cute because when she was in the hospital, when she had the baby, she was like, you know, don't tell nobody I had my baby, because at this point, nobody was really friends with her on Instagram but me, from what she said. So I seen everything, and then from there, you know, things got pretty hectic, pretty emotional, because the death didn't happen in Florida where we're from. It actually happened in a whole nother city, in a whole nother state. So just imagine like the pain, you know, that my family feels, because when the incident happened, it wasn't like, you know, anybody could just run and go help or just rescue her. Like, it wasn't anything like that. It was one of those like, I gotta get in my car or I gotta get on the plane and fly down there. So that was a traumatic experience for me, because it's so many, even now, like, it's so many unanswered questions, you know. And so that went home, ended up going home, you know, being around my family, still unanswered questions. It's just a lot of stuff. Then came the funeral, then came the wake. I'm not really going to go into details behind everything that happened, like as far as like, you know, the funeral and the wake, but just know it didn't turn out really pretty. And I'm not going to go into details behind who, you know, we think or we thought did it, because it's not for the books. If you know, you know. If you know my sister, cool. If you didn't know her, cool. However the case may be, it's too much sensitive information that I'm gonna put on the book, and I'm not doing it. So I just said all that to say, like, that was very, you know, detrimental for me, even still to this day. You know, it's not easy, you know, losing a family member, and it's not easy losing like a sibling, you know, nor like parents. Like, I haven't lost my parents, so I can't really relate to that. I could only relate to losing a sibling. And so ever since, you know, my sister passed away, I got depressed. I lost a lot after that. I went numb, and I'm still numb to all of it. Like, I feel like I don't have any emotions. It took me a very long time to process it, because I just honestly couldn't believe it, and I still can't believe it. But I definitely have like a lot of story times that I will be, you know, discussing in the later videos and things like that. So if you like this video, once again, subscribe to my channel. And you know what? Pressure Gang, we out.